Most motorcycles are built to solve a problem. These motorcycles created new ones. Over the next few minutes, you're going to see 15 machines with engines where they don't belong, wheels where nobody expected them, and designs so bizarre that some writers still refuse to believe they were ever put into production. A few were brilliant, a few were disasters, and one of them is so absurd that if you showed it to most writers without proof, they'd swear it was fake. Let's get into it. Number 15, Yamaha GTS 1000. If someone covered the Yamaha badges and parked this motorcycle beside a row of ordinary sport tours, most riders would assume it came from the future. Even today, decades after its debut, the GTS 1000 looks like a machine that somehow escaped a secret engineering project. At its heart sat a 1,002 cubic centimeter liquid, cooled inline for producing roughly 100 horsepower. On paper, that sounds familiar enough. The shock came when your eyes moved toward the front wheel, because the GTS abandoned one of motorcycling's oldest traditions. Instead of conventional forks, Yamaha equipped it with a radical hub center steering system connected to a single-sided front swing arm. The result looked almost unnatural. Riders stared at it, engineers admired it, and many buyers simply did not know what to make of it. The remarkable part is that the concept actually worked. Braking remained more composed, steering forces were separated from suspension movement, and the motorcycle delivered a riding experience unlike almost anything else on the road. Yet success never arrived. The bike was expensive, complicated, and perhaps too advanced for its own good. Riders trusted what they understood, and most understood forks. Today, that commercial disappointment has transformed into collector fascination. The GTS 1000 remains proof that sometimes the boldest ideas are not the ones that change history. If discovering the forgotten side of motorcycle history is exactly why you watch channels like this, drop a hype in the comments and subscribe. That support is what allows us to keep digging up the rare machines, failed experiments, and unbelievable engineering stories most riders never hear about. And if removing the front fork sounds unconventional, the next motorcycle took a completely different approach to rewriting the rulebook. Number 14, Honda DN01. Some motorcycles fit neatly into a category. You look at them once and immediately understand their purpose. The Honda DN01 was not one of those motorcycles. When it arrived, riders struggled to describe what they were seeing. The long, low silhouette suggested a cruiser. The sleek bodywork looked like something pulled from a science fiction film. Yet the riding experience felt closer to an automatic scooter than a traditional motorcycle. Beneath the futuristic styling sat a 680 cubic centimeter, liquid-cooled V-twin producing roughly 60 horsepower. That engine was perfectly sensible. What Honda attached to it was the part that left enthusiasts scratching their heads. Instead of a conventional gearbox, the DN01 used Honda's human-friendly transmission, an advanced automatic system that eliminated clutch work almost entirely. Twist the throttle and go. No clutch lever, no traditional shifting routine. On a large displacement motorcycle, that felt almost unbelievable at the time. Honda believed it was creating something entirely new. The problem was that buyers could not decide what it actually was. Cruiser riders wanted a cruiser. Touring riders wanted a tourer. Scooter riders wanted something lighter and less expensive. The technology performed exactly as intended. The marketplace did not. Today, that confusion has become its greatest source of fascination. Imagine standing in front of a bike you want, the seller swearing it's perfect. That's where riders overpay by thousands on a $10,000 bike. Our buyer's kit tells you what it's really worth, your fair price, and when to walk away. A wrong bike costs thousands. This kit, just $49. The easiest money you'll ever save. Scan the QR on the right or tap the link in the description. Let's get that bike you've always wanted for even cheaper. The DN01 remains one of the boldest category-defying experiments ever placed in a showroom. But no matter how unconventional its shape became, its heart remained familiar. That is exactly where the next chapter becomes far stranger. Because the following machine wasn't built around an unusual body or transmission, It was built around an engine technology so rare that most manufacturers abandoned it before it ever had a chance to succeed. Number 13, Suzuki RE5. Most motorcycle manufacturers spend decades refining the same basic formula. Suzuki looked at that formula in the middle of the 1970s and decided to throw a large portion of it away. The result was the RE5, a motorcycle that remains one of the boldest engineering gambles ever attempted by a major manufacturer. At first glance, it already looked unusual. The bodywork carried a futuristic personality that felt years ahead of its time. But the real surprise was hidden beneath the fuel tank. Instead of a conventional piston engine, the RE5 used a liquid-cooled rotary power plant with an equivalent displacement of roughly 497 cubic centimeters. Rather than pistons moving up and down, a triangular rotor spun inside a specially shaped chamber, creating power in a way that seemed almost alien compared to every other motorcycle parked beside it. And remarkably, it worked. The engine delivered smooth power, minimal vibration, and a riding experience unlike anything most riders had ever encountered. Unfortunately, innovation came with a price. The motorcycle generated substantial heat, consumed fuel at an alarming rate, and cost considerably more than many conventional alternatives. Riders admired it. Few actually bought it. Production ended quickly, but the legend never disappeared. Now I want to hear from you. Before today, had you ever heard of a rotary-powered motorcycle like the RE5? Or have you actually seen one in person? Leave a comment below because these rare machines are disappearing fast, and real-world stories from riders and collectors often reveal details that never make it into the history books. And while Suzuki experimented with an unconventional engine, the next machine questions something even more basic: what a motorcycle should look like in the first place. Number 12, BMW C1. Every rider accepts a few unwritten truths. When it rains, you get wet. When it is cold, you bundle up. And when you ride a motorcycle, there is nothing above your head except the sky. BMW looked at those assumptions and decided they were optional. The result was the C1, a machine that seemed to blur the line between motorcycle, scooter, and automobile. At first glance, it looked almost impossible to categorize. There was a windshield, a roof, even a protective safety structure surrounding the rider. And that was not some concept vehicle sitting under show lights. It was a real production machine. Power came from a liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine available in displacements up to 176 cubic centimeters. But nobody remembered the C1 because of its performance. They remembered it because of what sat above the rider. BMW engineered an integrated safety cage, complete with seat belts and rollover protection. In certain markets, riders could legally operate it without a helmet, something that sounded completely absurd to traditional motorcyclists. Remarkably, the concept worked. Owners appreciated the weather protection and everyday practicality. The challenge was convincing riders to strap themselves into something that looked unlike anything else on two wheels. Sales never reached the levels BMW hoped for, but the C1 achieved something far more unusual. It forced people to question what a motorcycle could become. The BMW C1 challenged expectations by surrounding a rider with features normally reserved for automobiles. It was strange because of everything added to the motorcycle. The next machine arrives from the opposite direction. Rather than adding things, its designers removed one of the most recognizable motorcycle components ever created and somehow expected it to work better because of it. Number 11, Bimota TC 1D. Most motorcycle engineers spend their careers improving existing ideas. The people behind the Bimota TC 1D started with a far more dangerous question. What if one of the most recognizable parts of a motorcycle did not need to exist at all? At first glance, the TC looked incomplete. Riders searched for the front forks and could not find them. That is because there were none. Power came from a Ducati-derived 904 cubic centimeter L-twin, an engine already respected for its character and performance. But the engine was merely the foundation for a much stranger experiment. Instead of conventional forks, the TC used a hub-center steering system built around swing arms, linkages, and pivots that controlled the front wheel in a completely different way. The entire machine looked less like transportation and more like a prototype assembled by engineers determined to challenge tradition. And surprisingly, the concept delivered real advantages. Hard braking created less chassis disturbance, stability remained impressive, and the motorcycle felt unlike anything else on the road. The problem was cost. Complexity drove prices into exotic territory, limiting production and keeping the TC far from the mainstream. Today, that rarity has transformed it into one of motorcycling's most celebrated engineering statements. The 𝐏𝐄𝐑 completely reimagined how a motorcycle could steer. But here's the question. Would you trust a bike with no traditional forks underneath you at highway speed? Tell us in the comments. Some riders see genius. Others see a science experiment. I want to know where you stand. And while the 𝐏𝐶 rewrote the rules underneath the motorcycle, the next machine rewrote them everywhere you looked. Number 10. Honda Rune. By this point in the countdown, strange engineering is no longer enough. The motorcycles ahead have to make people question whether they should exist at all, and few machines do that better than the Honda Rune. The moment it appears, it stops looking like a motorcycle and starts looking like a custom showpiece worth a fortune. The sweeping bodywork, enormous proportions, and sculpted details feel almost impossible for a factory-built machine. Beneath the artwork sat a massive 1,832 cubic centimeter, flat-six engine derived from Honda's Goldwing. Smooth, powerful, and effortless, it gave the Rune the performance to match its dramatic presence. But power was never the real story. What made the Rune extraordinary was that it looked like a concept bike that somehow escaped the auto show stage and entered production. The stretched, trailing link front suspension, flowing fenders, and seamless body panels seemed far too ambitious for mass manufacturing. Financially, the project made little sense, yet Honda built it anyway. The Rune proved that bizarre motorcycles don't always come from failed experiments. Sometimes they come from manufacturers with enough confidence to build something outrageously ambitious. Yet the next machine earns its place through pure practicality. Its strange feature wasn't designed to attract attention at a bike show. It was created to go somewhere ordinary motorcycles simply couldn't follow. Number 9. Rokon Trailbreaker. Most motorcycles are built around a simple assumption: eventually you're going to find a road. The Rokon Trailbreaker was built for the exact opposite situation. At first glance, it looks almost agricultural. Rugged frame, balloon-like wheels. No attempt to impress anyone with speed or style. But the deeper you look, the stranger the story becomes. Beneath the machine sits a modest 208 cubic centimeter single-cylinder engine, producing roughly 7 horsepower. On paper, that sounds laughably small. Then you discover what the engineers were actually trying to accomplish. Unlike nearly every motorcycle ever built, the Trailbreaker sends power to both wheels. That mechanical two-wheel drive system transformed it into a climbing, crawling, mud-crossing specialist capable of reaching places that leave ordinary motorcycles stranded. Even the oversized drum wheels serve a second purpose, functioning as storage compartments and flotation devices. And remarkably, the idea worked. The Trailbreaker never became a mainstream motorcycle, but it earned something arguably more impressive: decades of continuous production and a fiercely loyal following among hunters, ranchers, rescue crews, and backcountry explorers. The Trailbreaker looked unusual because it solved a problem most motorcycles never attempted to solve. But even with two driven wheels, you could still instantly recognize it as a motorcycle. That recognition starts to disappear with the next entry, because the following machine borrowed more ideas from automobiles than motorcycles, creating something so unconventional that people struggled to decide what they were actually looking at. Number 8. 𝐑𝐈𝐃𝐃𝐑. By the early 1920s, motorcycles were already following a familiar formula: 2 wheels, high seating position, bicycle-inspired proportions. Then the Nura car arrived and ignored almost all of it. Created by American inventor Carl Nereker, this machine looked less like a motorcycle and more like something from an alternate timeline. The rider sat deep inside a low-slung frame instead of perched on top of it. creating a silhouette that felt decades ahead of its ERA. Power came from a small single-cylinder engine, eventually growing to nearly 300 cubic centimeters. But the engine wasn't what made people stare. The real surprise was the layout itself. With hub-center steering, a step-through chassis, and an unconventional friction drive transmission, the 𝐑𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐑 car operated unlike almost anything sharing the road with it. Yet against all odds, buyers embraced it. Thousands were sold on both sides of the Atlantic. The strangest part? Many of its ideas would later appear on modern scooters. But while the 𝐑𝐈𝐃 car challenged how a motorcycle should be ridden, the next machine challenged how a motorcycle should look, creating a design so radical that many people still struggle to believe it was real. Number 7. Yamaha Niken. By this point in the countdown, strange engineering is becoming the norm. But even among these motorcycles, the Yamaha Niken stands apart. Because the first time most people see it, they stop and stare. Not at the engine, not at the bodywork, at the front end. Introduced in 2018, the Niken borrowed Yamaha's celebrated inline 3 power plant, an engine known for strong acceleration, sharp response, and real-world performance. Nothing about the powertrain was unusual. The surprise came from the decision sitting ahead of it. 2 front wheels, not for appearance, not for attention, for grip. Using an intricate leaning multi-wheel suspension system, both front tires remain planted through corners, creating remarkable stability on wet pavement, uneven roads, and demanding mountain routes. Riders who tried it often came away impressed by the confidence it inspired. The challenge was perception. Many enthusiasts simply could not see past its unconventional face. Yet despite its unusual front end, every strange component served a practical purpose. The next machine doesn't chase practicality nearly as hard. Instead, it looks like something that escaped from an aircraft hangar, a motorcycle built with such an extreme design philosophy that many people mistake it for a movie prop before realizing it's completely real. Number 6. Confederate Fighter. Most motorcycles hide their engineering beneath body panels, paint, and styling tricks. The Confederate Fighter did the exact opposite. The moment you see one, it feels less like a motorcycle and more like a machine that escaped from an aerospace laboratory. Raw aluminum, exposed mechanical components, massive structural pieces proudly displayed instead of concealed. And that was entirely intentional. Built by Confederate motorcycles in the early 2000s, the Fighter was powered by an enormous air-cooled V-twin, displacing nearly 2,000 cubic centimeters and producing well over 100 horsepower. The performance was serious, but speed was never the reason people couldn't stop staring. The real spectacle was the motorcycle itself. Its billet aluminum frame, girder-style front suspension, and visible engineering transformed every mechanical component into part of the design. Looking at it felt like seeing the inner workings of a machine without the outer shell. As a mainstream motorcycle, it never stood a chance. As a rolling piece of industrial art, it became legendary. The Confederate Fighter earns attention through sheer visual aggression. Every angle feels rebellious. Every component seems designed to provoke a reaction. But the next machine became bizarre for a completely different reason. Instead of looking intimidating, it introduced a solution that sounded almost absurd on paper, and somehow convinced thousands of riders that it actually made sense. Number 5. Piaggio MP3. The Piaggio MP3 became strange on purpose. When it arrived in the mid-2000s, many riders thought they were looking at a design mistake. From the front, it resembled a miniature automobile. From the rear, it looked like an ordinary scooter. And somehow, those two ideas were fused into a single machine. The reason was impossible to miss: 2 front wheels. Using an ingenious parallelogram suspension system, both wheels leaned together through corners, allowing the MP3 to feel surprisingly natural while delivering far more front-end grip than most riders expected. Even more unusual, the suspension could lock at a stop, letting the machine stand upright without a kickstand or a foot on the ground. It sounded gimmicky. Instead, it worked. The MP3 proved that unusual ideas can become commercial successes when they solve real-world problems. Yet even with its unconventional layout, it was still designed for everyday transportation. The next entry wasn't trying to make commuting easier. It was trying to rewrite the engineering rulebook itself. And the result became one of the most legendary examples of motorcycle innovation ever created. Number 4, Britain V1000. Most motorcycles on this countdown became famous because they look strange. The Britain V1000 earned its reputation for a completely different reason. It shouldn't have existed at all. In the early 1990s, the world's largest motorcycle manufacturers were pouring enormous resources into racing development. Honda, Yamaha, Ducati, Suzuki, companies with factories, engineers, and budgets that seemed impossible to challenge. Then a small team in New Zealand led by John Britton did exactly that. Powered by a 998 cubic centimeter water-cooled V-twin, producing roughly 166 horsepower, the V1000 delivered superbike performance that could compete with, and often defeat, the industry's biggest names. But what made it truly extraordinary was its engineering philosophy. Traditional forks were replaced by an unconventional front suspension system that looked more at home on an aircraft. The engine itself became a structural component, while lightweight carbon fiber and Kevlar materials helped create a machine that appeared decades ahead of its ERA. And remarkably, it worked. The Briton claimed major victories, set records, and became one of motorcycling's greatest underdog stories. Only a handful were ever built, making surviving examples among the most valuable motorcycles on Earth. The V1000 showed that revolutionary engineering can outperform established thinking when a visionary refuses to follow tradition. But even that groundbreaking machine kept its engine where most people expect an engine to be. The next motorcycle abandons that piece of logic entirely. In fact, its strangest feature is located in the very place most engineers would consider impossible. Number 3, Magola. By the time we reach the top 3, ordinary definitions of motorcycle design no longer apply, and the Magola may be the perfect example. Most motorcycles place the engine inside the frame and connect it to the wheels through a chain, belt, or drive shaft. The engineers behind the Magola looked at that arrangement and chose a completely different path. They mounted the entire engine inside the front wheel. Built in Germany during the early 1920s, the Magola used a 640 cubic centimeter, 5-cylinder rotary engine that rotated around the front axle as the motorcycle moved. Not beside the wheel, not behind it, inside it. Watching one in motion feels almost surreal. The cylinders spin continuously with the wheel, creating a machine that looks more like an experimental aircraft component than a motorcycle. And somehow the engineering became even stranger. The Magola had no clutch and no conventional gearbox. If the engine was running, the motorcycle wanted to keep moving. Riders often had to plan their stops carefully because restarting the machine could be an adventure all by itself. Remarkably, it worked. Racing versions found success, and a surprising number were built for the ERA. The Magola feels almost unbelievable because its engine doesn't simply power the motorcycle, it becomes part of the wheel itself. It is the kind of idea that sounds like a sketch that should never have left the drawing board. Yet the next machine takes a different route to insanity, because instead of putting a motorcycle engine in an unusual place, someone decided to put an automobile engine where no motorcycle engine had any business being. Number 2, Dodge Tomahawk. The Dodge Tomahawk was built to make people question whether they were looking at a motorcycle at all. When it appeared in the early 2000s, the reaction was almost universal. People stopped, stared, and tried to figure out what they were seeing. From certain angles, it looked like a machine from a science fiction film. From others, it looked like a muscle car that had somehow shed everything except its engine. And that engine was the entire point. Nestled at the center sat an enormous Viper, derived V10, displacing more than 8,000 cubic centimeters and producing roughly 500 horsepower. In the world of motorcycles, those numbers were beyond excessive. They were almost absurd, yet the engine was only half the story. Look closer and another surprise appears. The Tomahawk didn't ride on two wheels. It rode on four, arranged in closely spaced pairs that allowed the machine to lean while creating a silhouette unlike anything before or since. Did it work? As a real-world motorcycle? Not particularly. As an engineering spectacle? Absolutely. More than 2 decades later, people still talk about it because nobody has ever forgotten it. Before we reveal the strangest motorcycle in this entire countdown, I want to hear from you. Out of everything we've seen so far, which machine genuinely made you question whether it should even be called a motorcycle? Leave a comment below because some of the most obscure bikes on this channel come directly from suggestions and stories shared by riders like you. The Tomahawk looks like the ultimate answer to the question, how extreme can a motorcycle become? A massive V10, an outrageous stance, and proportions that seem almost cartoonish. But the final machine in this countdown earns its position for a different reason. It doesn't rely on horsepower, futuristic styling, or engineering spectacle. Instead, it achieves something even rarer, the ability to make people question whether they're looking at a motorcycle at all. And that brings us to the next and final chapter of this countdown, one of the strangest creations ever placed on two wheels. Number 1. Böhmerland Langtouren. We've finally reached the top spot, and after motorcycles with rotary engines, hub-center steering, and even an engine spinning inside the front wheel, you might think nothing could possibly be more unbelievable. Then you see the Böhmerland Langtouren. Built during the 1920s, this extraordinary machine challenged one of the most basic assumptions in motorcycle design. How long can a motorcycle become before it stops feeling like a motorcycle? Most bikes are built for one rider. Some comfortably carry two. The Langtouren was designed to carry 3 people in a single line, requiring an enormous frame that stretched more than 10 feet from wheel to wheel. Parked beside a normal motorcycle, it looked almost surreal, as if someone had pulled the chassis from both ends and refused to stop. Yet remarkably, it worked. Its massive wheelbase delivered impressive stability for long-distance travel, and production continued for years despite its unconventional layout. The Böhmerland earns the number 1 position because it did not rely on exotic technology or radical engines. It simply took the familiar idea of a motorcycle and stretched it beyond reason. And that's what makes these motorcycles so fascinating. Some were engineering breakthroughs, some were expensive mistakes, and some were so bizarre that decades later, people still struggle to believe they were ever built at all. But if you think this is the strangest side of motorcycling, you're only seeing part of the story. The next video takes you even deeper into the machines, myths, engineering experiments, and forgotten chapters that most riders never discover. Click the next video and continue the road trip. Join our tribe by subscribing, and don't forget to like this video.